Hello there, it's Alan here from Alan's BMX in Wigan in the United Kingdom. Pretty emotional to show you this. It's a December 1983 Torker 280X complete bike. We were the UK importers and European importers really for Torker between April 1981 and when they went into liquidation, bankruptcy in November 1984. So yeah, this was a really important model in the lineup, and there's a little bit to tell you about it. The bike was originally purchased from us at our Hindley, Wigan store, about 3 or 4 miles away from where I'm stood today, and yeah, it was a really important bike. So Torker, as you might know, based in Fullerton, Southern California, founded by the Johnson family. And they were making what was really kind of racing BMX frame and forks predominantly. Now, when we went out in April 1981, Chuck Robinson took us around. You probably heard this story before. Took us around to a lot of different brands, Premier Helmets and Vans and Amy Griffiths and other places, and we were racing, 7 times a week, twice on a Saturday, twice on a Sunday, all through the week. Ascot, Devonshire Downs, you name it. But while Robinson was great, and they had, a high-end frame and fork set, we were looking for something a little bit more affordable. So we said to Chuck, do you know anywhere else? Oh, we'd done CYC. We did a CYC Stormers previously, but that was kind of coming to an end. Do you know anybody else who does a more affordable bike, or maybe complete? And he went, well, the Steve Johnson Torker. So we drove out of Fullerton and met Steve and Doris and Doug and Magoo. And yeah, so at 16 years of age, I was also the importer for Torker in the United Kingdom. So as I said, that was frame and forks. So at that point, we had the LP and the LPX frames, which were this frame basically, but with the round head tube gusset. So those frames were made in California. And I think we maybe had the Jason Jensen replica as well, the EK, which Torker have just recently sort of reissued. We never had, but we did have the Jason Jensen, and we had the 26-inch frame and forks as well. So that's what we had initially. So that was all well and good, but we still didn't really have a mass market complete bike. Torker did do prior to this a Torque Flight and a Max Flight. The Torque Flight came with a one-piece chromoly crank, and the Max Flight was a little bit higher end with the Ultra 6 Torker stem and 3-piece aluminium cranks. But they weren't really volume. But basically, and I believe this was part of, they were getting the components from Howie Cohen at Everything Bicycles, aka Kuwahara, and they were just assembling them in the Fullerton facility. But we never sold many complete bikes, and obviously the cost wasn't really competitive. Anyway, then Diamondback came out with the Silver Streak, which on the back of the Mongoose complete bikes gave people a good brand with dialed geometry, but an affordable price. So once the Silver Streak came out, which is a direct competitor to what Torker were doing, Torker were like, man, what are we going to do? So Steve went to Japan, met up with this company called Mori, M-O-R-I, Bicycle Co., and they provided the components. So we were buying them all from the Far East rather than buying them from a distributor in the US and then trying to resell them. So, yeah, that was all good. So Steve sent us a fax, which is how we communicated in them days before email, and said, hey, listen, we're doing these complete bikes. Frame and forks will come from us here in Fullerton, but you'll buy the components in a box from Japan, which is what we did. So they had the frame and forks there, and they would send those. So we'd order, 50 of the parts kits, and we'd order 50 frames, and they would come from California, and then we would ship them out to dealers, so the dealer would get, and obviously they weren't assembled, they were like components in a box, everything apart from the frame of fork, and then the frame of fork came separately, and we just, I guess we just taped those together and shipped them out. Anyway, they're an enormous success. We just couldn't get enough of them, and we still sold them as a frame and fork. So if we go back to 1982, 1983, you could have bought this as a frame and fork. It was called an LP, which stood for low profile, because to distinguish it, because the early big frames had a much taller seat tube. So these were LP, and then we had the LPX. The LPX was about 3/4 of an inch longer in the top tube, so very little in it. And then for the complete bike designation, they were called 280, and what we have here, 280X. So the idea was, 280, slightly shorter rider. 280X was kind of the, I guess, pro size, what you call it, a pro. So I guess maybe they were like Pro and Pro XL is what you would have called them back in the day. However, and we didn't really see this, but the consumer did, and the dealers got demand. People wanted the 280X, like, rather than the 280. It was like the one better than the 280, even though it was only the top tube. So we got smaller kids still wanting the 280X because it sounded like it was the better one, and we probably sold 3-to-1 or maybe 4-to-1 ratio of 280X to 280. So here in the UK, at least, if you are looking up to find one of these, the 280 probably is the rarer variant of the two. And then just going back to the gusset, originally the LP and the LPX frames had a round hole here in the gusset, but they used to crack across here. So there's probably not many frames that haven't had a crack there. And if you find one that hasn't had a crack, maybe like in this kind of condition, it's hardly been ridden, you're really lucky, because they did crack. So they just put this oval, slotted, whatever you want to call it, in here. So both, just to clarify, both the frames and the 280 and 280X complete bikes, the earlier ones like 1982 would have had the round hole, and as we started to get into 1983, listen, don't ask me what month or day they changed from one to the other. Maybe somebody knows, but to us they were just an improvement, because we were having to warranty these frames. So it was frustrating, because I don't think we ever had a frame break in the traditional spot, here on where the down tube meets the head tube. We never had an issue like that. We never had any issues with the seat tube, seat mast, like PK Ripper issues. So it was just a bit annoying to have this issue with the crack in the gusset, and then the frame after this, the Pro X, had this little triangular red line gusset here, and then they all cracked as well, didn't they? So that's a story for another day. So yeah, and 280, this was the recommended retail price in the United States, so $280, and I think we sold these in the UK for about £225, and then nowadays you can almost kind of translate one for the other, but then the pound was much stronger, up to, I remember it being $2.4 dollars to the pound. But yeah, the components were great. So obviously Steve had looked at the Diamondback Silver Streak and how that was equipped. So yeah, very similar componentry. Nice saddle, which had the Torker logo on here. You'll just be able to see it. It's rubbed off slightly. A lot of SR components, which were standard for back in the day, and of course were used on the Silver Streak, and then the Viper after that. So yeah, SR pedals, the chainring and spider setup. One thing was quite nice. Steve chose these cadmium plated 7X rims, because at the time there was either the anodized colors like anodized silver or chrome plating. And chrome plating then, as now, has a lot of issues with separating from the aluminium. So he specced this cadmium, which is like a shinier than the silver, It's a really nice finish, and it's quite cool. They came with these little Torker stickers on them, which was quite neat, and alloy nipples as well, which was quite cool. This bike that you see here is completely original, apart from the tires, which the rear both had been replaced when we got this. We only got this bike this week, and they came with IRC Z1 tires, front and rear, 175 on the rear and a 2125 on the front. But the front tire was really, really wide, and we did send one to for test with the UK BMX Action magazine. It was tested by Mark Sid Salisbury, and one of the criticisms was the front tire was too wide. But we've just popped on the reissue from a few years ago, Skinwall Comp 3s. And it doesn't, we were just talking about this, it doesn't look too incongruous with the rest of the look of the bike. Maybe the Gunwall tyres, which are a little bit more orange, would have looked a little bit weird. And it originally came with Amy tri-grips, but the originals were completely, they were toast. So we just put some new ones on there. Everything else, the DID chain, the pad set, the seat post, the hubs, the rims, everything else is 100% original. Unfortunately, it doesn't have, and it came with them, it doesn't have the little Torker cable guides, which I know those things are really, really rare now. So yeah, what an amazing bike. And after this, the success, everyone was going to the Far East, GT, Haro. Everyone was going to get bikes manufactured there. So after Japan, Taiwan started to become the place to be able to get decent quality bikes made at a reasonable price. So the model that superseded this, which was called the Magnum 200, and yes, you guessed it, it was $200, replaced this bike.